The battlefield was chaos. Smoke billowed into the sky, blocking out the light of the full moon as the remnants of the Fourth Great Ninja War raged on. Explosions rocked the ground beneath my feet, sending tremors through the shattered earth as shinobi clashed in a desperate bid for survival. I could hear the desperate cries of my comrades, the clash of kunai, the howls of the injured, and the roar of the monstrous 10 tails in the distance. I was fighting alongside Naruto Uzumaki, the so-called Child of Prophecy, the destined savior of the shinobi world, but as I clashed with an opponent far beyond my league, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was nothing more than a footnote in someone else's grand story. No matter how hard I fought, no matter how much I bled for this village, history would remember Naruto, Sasuke, and their final battle. My name would fade into the background, another forgotten shinobi who played no real role in the grand scheme of things. A sharp pain tore through my chest as a blade pierced my ribs, my eyes widening in shock as I staggered backward. Blood dripped from the wound, hot and thick, as my enemy, a masked shinobi with an unnatural gleam in his eyes, smirked beneath his cracked porcelain mask. I had been fast, but he had been faster, and in that moment, as I collapsed to the ground, I realized something horrifying. This was it. This was how my story ended. Not in a heroic blaze of glory, not in a final, desperate stand that would be etched into history, but in silence. No one would remember this moment. No one would remember me. I turned my gaze to Naruto, who stood just a few feet away, still fighting, his chakra blazing like a sun against the darkness of war. He was going to win. He was always going to win. It had been decided long before this war ever started. The world had chosen him. It had chosen Sasuke. It had chosen their battle as the one that mattered. And I? I was just an extra, a name that would never make it into the textbooks, a warrior who had given everything for a village that would never give anything back. The pain in my chest grew distant, the sounds of battle muffling as my vision darkened. My hands trembled as I reached out, trying to grasp something, anything, that would keep me tethered to this world. But there was nothing, just emptiness, just the cold realization that I was dying and I would be forgotten. And then, darkness. But death was not the end. I gasped awake, lungs burning, as I bolted upright, my hands instinctively clutching at my chest where the wound had been. But there was no pain, no blood, no battlefield. Instead, I found myself in a small wooden room, the faint scent of ink and parchment filling my nostrils. My breathing was ragged, my mind reeling as I struggled to understand what had just happened. The last thing I remembered was dying, bleeding out in the middle of the battlefield, knowing that I had been erased from history. But this wasn't the afterlife. I stumbled out of the small cot, my legs weak beneath me as I looked down at my hands. They were smaller. My fingers were thinner, my skin smoother, untouched by years of battle. A jarring realization crashed into me like a tidal wave. I was a child. My heart pounded violently against my ribs as I stumbled toward the small mirror propped against the wooden wall. The reflection staring back at me was not that of a war-hardened shinobi. It was a boy, no older than 6, with dark, wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. Memories that were not my own flooded my mind, intertwining with my past life like tangled threads of fate. I wasn't just any child. I was a shinobi in training, a nameless orphan in the Hidden Leaf Village, growing up in the era before Naruto Uzumaki was even born. My mind struggled to process the impossibility of it all, the sheer insanity of what had happened to me. I had died, erased from history, only to wake up in a past where my existence had never mattered in the first place. But then a thought struck me, sharp and clear, cutting through the haze of my confusion like a kunai slicing through the air. This was a second chance. A second chance to do what? At first I thought about warning Konoha about the disasters that would come, the Uchiha massacre, the Akatsuki's rise, the fall of the third Hokage, but then I stopped. What had Konoha ever done for me? What had they ever done for the shinobi who bled and died for them? They had chosen their heroes, their destined figures, and discarded the rest. No, I would not be another nameless shinobi. I would not be a forgotten warrior fighting in the shadows of men like Naruto Uzumaki. If I had been erased once, then I would rewrite history in my name this time. I would not allow fate to dictate my story again. Naruto had become Hokage while I was forgotten, but this time I would take his place. A new fire ignited within me, burning away the doubts, the confusion, the fear. I was a child, yes, but I had the mind and experience of a veteran shinobi. I knew how the future would unfold. I knew every battle, every war, every secret that Konoha kept buried beneath its pristine image. And if I played my cards right, if I moved carefully and deliberately, I could shape the world into one where I was the legend. Not Naruto, not Sasuke, me. The first step was power. I needed to be stronger than anyone else in this village, stronger than the Hokage, stronger than Naruto would ever become. My fingers curled into fists as I made my decision. I would learn everything, every forbidden technique, every lost jutsu, every hidden truth buried in the depths of the shinobi world. If Naruto had the power of Kurama, I would find something greater. If Sasuke had the Sharingan, I would claim something far deadlier. If the world had chosen them as its heroes, then I would force it to change its mind. This time, I would not be erased. I took a deep breath, steadying myself as I looked at my reflection once more. The boy staring back at me was no longer just a forgotten orphan. He was something more. He was someone who had seen the end of the world and had returned to claim it for himself. Konoha would not see me coming. I turned away from the mirror, my mind already racing through my next moves. There was much to do, much to prepare for, but one thing was certain: this time, I would not be standing in Naruto's shadow. I would be the light that consumed him. The weight of the world seemed to crash down on me as I stood there, in that small room, the echoes of my past life slowly fading away. Reborn, a child in an unfamiliar time, I could still hear the sounds of the battlefield in my mind. The roar of battle, the blood, the screams, and the faces of my comrades who had fallen, forgotten just like me. But this time, the world was different. This time, I wasn't just a cog in the machine of Konoha's military force. I had memories, experiences, a lifetime of knowledge that had been granted to me as I returned to this world. And now, I had a choice. I had been given another chance, but what would I do with it? I clenched my fists, the knuckles white under the pressure of my grip. I wasn't going to waste this second chance. No, I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to become the greatest shinobi this village had ever known. I wasn't going to let fate decide my story. I would be the one to carve my name into the history of Konoha, to stand as its true protector and leader. I would rise above the legends, surpass the shinobi who had been chosen by destiny, Naruto, Sasuke, everyone who had ever been remembered. I was going to take everything that had been denied to me in my past life, and no one, not even the Hokage himself, would stand in my way. The very first thing I had to do was gather power. I wasn't a child in the traditional sense. I had the memories, the skills, the knowledge of everything that was about to unfold. I knew Konoha's secrets, the forbidden techniques that were hidden from most shinobi, the weaknesses of every major figure in the village. I knew their strengths, their habits, their ambitions, and most importantly, I knew their weaknesses. But knowledge alone was not enough. No, it was not just about learning. It was about mastering the techniques, the skills, and the chakra that would give me the power I needed. My mind raced as I strategized. The first step was to gain control over my own chakra. I was no longer a child to be trained in the basic academy techniques. I had lived a full life. I had fought against foes who surpassed the strength of entire nations. I wasn't going to waste time learning how to do a simple clone jutsu or even a shadow clone. I would need something greater, something that could rival the very power of the Hokage. I began to meditate, focusing my chakra, feeling it pulse within me like a raging storm. It was different this time, though. The chakra was no longer just a source of power to be controlled. It was mine, and I could feel the ancient energy within me, swirling and expanding, a part of something greater. My senses expanded, and for the first time, I could feel the pulse of every living thing around me, the ebb and flow of chakra throughout the world. I could hear the whispers of the forest outside, feel the vibrations of the village walls. I could even sense the chakra of the Hokage, though it was distant and tightly controlled. I focused on my own, my chakra swirling around me, and I felt the power growing inside me. This wasn't just about learning jutsu. This was about transcending what it meant to be a shinobi. It was about unlocking the ancient powers that lay dormant within me, powers I had glimpsed in my past life, powers that had been denied to me then, powers that I would now control. Days passed, and I threw myself into my training, ignoring the reality that I was still a child in the eyes of Konoha's shinobi. I could hear the whispers of the villagers, see their concerned glances, their pitying looks as they saw me wandering the streets. They didn't know me. They didn't know the fire that burned within me, the fire that had been ignited by the cruel hand of fate. They had no idea that I had already surpassed many of them, that I could feel their chakra signatures as easily as breathing. They didn't know that I was no longer just a boy. I was something far more dangerous. By the time I was 7 years old, I had already mastered several jutsu that would have taken a normal child years to even begin to comprehend. I had learned how to mold my chakra in ways that were completely outside the scope of anything the academy could teach. I wasn't just manipulating chakra, I was reshaping it, making it my own, bending it to my will in ways that defied the very foundation of shinobi practices. I had begun to hear the whispers of ancient techniques, hidden jutsu that had been lost to time. Techniques that would grant me strength that no other shinobi could rival. And then, I found it. Hidden in the depths of Konoha's libraries, buried beneath layers of seals and protective jutsu, I discovered the forbidden scrolls. Scrolls that contained jutsu so powerful, they had been sealed away by the village elders, locked behind layers of protection and guarded by the most elite shinobi. But I didn't care about their warnings. I didn't care about the risks. I had a purpose now, and nothing was going to stop me from achieving it. I would learn these jutsu, unlock their secrets, and become the shinobi that the world would remember. I tore through the scrolls with a single-minded intensity, my eyes absorbing every word, every symbol, every formula. The ancient power began to flow through me as I unlocked jutsu that would have been deemed impossible for any normal shinobi. But I was no normal shinobi. I had the knowledge of a lifetime that had been denied to me, and now I would use it to claim my destiny. With every technique I mastered, my power grew exponentially. I could feel it inside me, a well of chakra that I could manipulate with ease. My body became a vessel for power. Chakra flowed through me like a raging river, unstoppable, uncontainable. I could control the very fabric of reality, bending it to my will. I was no longer the nameless shinobi who had been forgotten. I was something more. It was then that I decided my next move. I would no longer be a background player in Konoha's story. I would no longer be someone else's footnote. I would rise to the top. I would claim the title of Hokage, a title that Naruto Uzumaki had claimed in my past life. I would become the hero of Konoha, the one who had rewritten history, the one who had taken the destiny that was once his and made it my own. But there was one more thing I needed to do. I couldn't do this alone. I would need allies, those who believed in my vision, those who understood that the future of Konoha would not be shaped by fate or prophecy. It would be shaped by me. I began to seek them out, those who were dissatisfied with the current system, those who felt the weight of Konoha's failures, those who believed in change. I would bring them into my fold, and together we would reshape the future. We would bring an end to the cycle of forgotten shinobi. We would take Konoha back from the hands of those who thought they were destined for greatness, and we would show them what true power looked like. The journey had only just begun, but already I could feel the threads of fate unraveling. And in their place, I would weave my own story. The world had not seen anything like what I was about to create. The moon hung high over Konoha, casting silver light across the rooftops and the quiet village streets. The world slept in ignorant bliss, unaware that something was shifting in the shadows. I stood atop one of the taller buildings, my arms crossed as I watched the gentle flicker of lanterns still glowing in some windows. From here, the Hokage monument loomed in the distance, those carved faces of past leaders watching over the village like silent, unyielding judges. Their expressions were frozen in time, carved into stone as a symbol of the will of fire, the unbreakable chain of Konoha's ideals. I hated them. Those faces represented the very system that had forgotten me, the legacy that chose its heroes and discarded the rest. I had spent years training, growing, and gathering knowledge, that no one else in the village possessed. My body, once weak and frail in this reborn life, had transformed into something stronger than even I could have imagined. I had broken past the limitations that had once bound me. My chakra was no longer just a source of power, it was an extension of my will. The old methods of training, the academy, the structured ranking system of genin, chunin, and jonin, were nothing but a bureaucratic process designed to keep the strong in line while pretending that anyone could rise through the ranks. But I had no interest in playing by their rules. If I wanted to take the future that had been denied to me, I needed to strike first. And so, my first real move began tonight. I moved silently across the rooftops, my steps light, my breathing controlled. The village patrols were predictable, shinobi rotating in shifts to cover the walls and checkpoints, but I had memorized their patterns. I had studied them for weeks, learning their weak spots, their blind spots, their moments of fatigue. Tonight, I would infiltrate one of Konoha's most sacred places, the Hokage's archives. It was a vault of knowledge, a place where only the highest-ranking shinobi could access classified intelligence, forbidden jutsu, and ancient texts that had been hidden away from even the village elders. If I wanted to reshape the future, I needed to know everything. I slipped through the outer barriers with ease, using chakra suppression techniques that I'd honed in secrecy. I wasn't just another rogue ninja sneaking into a secured location. I was a ghost. My presence was undetectable, my movements so precise that even the Anbus stationed nearby didn't notice as I passed them. I felt the rush of adrenaline surge through me, but I stayed calm. This was just the beginning. The archive entrance was guarded, but not nearly as well as the village believed. I had already studied the seals placed on the doors, the chakra signatures left behind by those who came in and out. Most jonin never even touched these doors in their lifetimes. Only the Hokage, his most trusted advisors, and a select few Anbu had the clearance to enter. But they had made one mistake, assuming that no one outside their ranks was capable of bypassing their security. I placed my hand against the large wooden doors, my fingers tracing the intricate patterns of the sealing jutsu embedded in its frame. The moment my chakra touched it, I felt the barrier react, sensing an unfamiliar presence. A normal shinobi would be stopped immediately, caught in a counter-seal that would alert the guards. But I was not normal. I had studied the foundations of fuinjutsu, not just from modern techniques, but from the ancient scrolls I had unearthed in the forgotten corners of Konoha's history. I knew how to rewrite seals, how to disrupt them just enough to let myself through, while making it seem like nothing had changed. The barrier wavered, then flickered away as if it had never been there. I stepped inside. The archive was vast, a labyrinth of towering shelves filled with scrolls, books, and hidden compartments that held the secrets of Konoha's past. I walked through the rows, my eyes scanning the spines of ancient texts, each one containing something that could change the course of history if placed in the right hands. And then, I found it. A single scroll, locked behind another layer of protective seals. This one was different. It wasn't just knowledge, it was power. My fingers tingled as I traced the markings on the scroll's surface, and my heart pounded as I realized what I was looking at. The Tengoku no Shingan, the Heaven's Eye technique, a forbidden technique that had been erased from shinobi records long before the Uchiha and Senju had shaped Konoha. This was what I had been searching for. I knelt, pressing my hand against the second layer of seals. These were far more intricate, weaved with a combination of space-time jutsu and chakra suppression barriers. They had been designed so that even if someone could open the vault, they would never be able to break through the final lock without alerting the Hokage. But they underestimated me. I channeled my chakra slowly, meticulously unwinding the layers of protection, like unraveling a delicate thread. The seals resisted, pulsing against my energy, but I adjusted my flow, matching their frequency, pushing against the weak points where the fuinjutsu was the most fragile. The entire process took minutes, the longest and most dangerous minutes of my life. But then, with one final push, the final barrier broke. The scroll was in my hands. I exhaled, feeling the weight of what I had just done. This was no ordinary power. It was something lost to time, something that had been hidden for a reason. I could feel the ancient chakra woven into the parchment, the remnants of those who had wielded this power before me. and now it belonged to me. A sudden shift in the air sent a chill down my spine. Someone was coming. I reacted instantly, closing the scroll and slipping it into the hidden compartment in my robes before darting behind one of the massive shelves. The sound of soft footfalls echoed through the chamber, growing closer with each passing second. My body tensed, my heartbeat slowing as I pressed myself into the shadows. A figure entered the room, cloaked, masked, moving with a precision that only an Anbu Black Ops could possess. I watched as he scanned the room, his gaze lingering on the entrance I had unsealed. A flicker of suspicion crossed his stance, his hand moving toward the blade at his waist. I held my breath. The Anbu stepped forward, eyes scanning the rows of scrolls, his senses sharp. If I made even the slightest mistake, if I so much as let my chakra slip for a fraction of a second, I would be caught. But I had spent years perfecting this art. I moved with absolute silence, waiting for the perfect moment to slip past him. He turned for just a fraction of a second, and I vanished. I was outside the archive in an instant, heart pounding as I leaped across the rooftops, slipping back into the shadows of Konoha's streets. The scroll was mine. The knowledge, the power, it was all within my grasp now. And with this, the real game began. The weight of the stolen scroll pressed against my chest as I moved through the back alleys of Konoha, the night air thick with the quiet hum of the village's restless energy. The rooftops above me, the narrow passageways between homes, the flickering lanterns that illuminated the streets, everything felt sharper, more alive. I was no longer a nameless shadow moving unseen through the world. No, I was something else now, something far more dangerous. The knowledge I had stolen from the depths of the Hokage's archives was burning in my mind, the possibilities unraveling before me like an intricate web of power and destruction. I could feel it, the shift in fate, the rewriting of a history that had once forgotten me. I had stolen a piece of Konoha's legacy, and in doing so, I had rewritten my own. I slipped into the abandoned training grounds on the outskirts of the village, a place long forgotten by the current generation of shinobi. The trees stretched high into the dark sky, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze, and the old wooden dummies, scarred from decades of battle practice, stood as silent sentinels to my arrival. This place was mine now, a place beyond the reach of those who thought they controlled destiny. I unrolled the stolen scroll, my fingers trembling slightly as I took in the ancient script, the hand-sealed instructions that had been lost to time. This technique, it wasn't just power, it was something that transcended the limits of what shinobi had known. The Tengoku no Shingan, or Heaven's Eye technique, was more than just a jutsu. It was a philosophy, a rewriting of reality itself. The words etched into the parchment described a forbidden mastery over chakra perception, an ability that did not simply enhance one's vision, but allowed them to see the flow of chakra across all existence. Past, present, and future converging into one. It was beyond the Byakugan, beyond the Sharingan, even beyond the Rinnegan. It was a sight reserved for gods, and it had been hidden away because the mere idea of it was too dangerous for any shinobi to wield. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. This was what I had been searching for. The piece of fate that had been stolen from me in my past life. The world had chosen its champions, Naruto, Sasuke, those deemed worthy of power and legacy. But what about those of us who had been forgotten, who had been cast aside, unchosen? I sat cross-legged in the clearing, my hands forming the seals outlined in the scroll. The moment my fingers locked into position, I felt it, a pulse, a deep vibration in the very core of my being. My chakra flared to life, swirling around me like an uncontrollable storm. The air grew thick, suffocating, as the world around me began to shatter. The trees blurred, the stars above flickered, and suddenly, I was somewhere else. I gasped, my vision spiraling into something unnatural. The training grounds had disappeared, and in their place was a vast void, a swirling abyss of darkness and infinite light. Figures moved in the distance, faint outlines of people, their forms flickering between clarity and obscurity. I saw Naruto, his younger self running through the streets of Konoha, alone and shunned, his face filled with a determination that would one day shape the future. I saw Sasuke standing beneath the full moon, his clan's blood pooling around his feet, his eyes burning with vengeance. I saw the Hokage monument crumbling, the village engulfed in war, shinobi clashing in the streets as the world unraveled into chaos. And then I saw myself. Or rather, I saw the versions of me that had existed before this moment. The forgotten shinobi, the nameless one, the one who had fought and bled for a village that had discarded him. The one who had died without a name, without a story, without a legacy. No. I refused to let that be my fate again. I focused, my mind tearing through the visions, bending the chaotic energy to my will. The Tengoku no Shingon was not meant to be wielded by humans. It was a power that glimpsed the raw, unfiltered truth of existence. But I was not afraid of truth. I would master it, just as I had mastered everything else in my relentless pursuit of power. I forced my way out of the void, gasping as my consciousness snapped back into reality. My body collapsed against the ground, my muscles trembling, my breath ragged as sweat dripped down my forehead. My vision was still distorted, my mind reeling from the sheer intensity of what I had just seen. But something was different now. The world. It looked clearer. I could see chakra flowing through everything. The trees, the rocks, the insects crawling through the grass. I could feel the presence of life even beyond the training grounds, sensing the distant pulses of the shinobi moving through Konoha, their every motion like ripples in an endless ocean. This was true power. I rose to my feet, my hands clenched into fists. The jutsu had nearly consumed me, nearly erased me from existence, but I had tamed it. I had survived. And now I understood. The world was not decided by fate, it was decided by those strong enough to reshape it. A sound behind me snapped me back to attention. I turned just in time to see a masked figure emerge from the shadows. Anbu. I cursed under my breath. They had followed me. No, someone had sensed the disturbance. The jutsu had been too powerful, its effects too far-reaching to remain unnoticed. I had been too absorbed in my training to realize that I had exposed myself. The masked shinobi said nothing, only reached for the short sword at his back. I saw the flicker of steel as he moved, and then he vanished. My palm struck his chest, chakra surging forward in a controlled burst. The masked shinobi froze, his body seizing as his nervous system was momentarily overloaded by my technique. I stepped back, watching as he collapsed to his knees, gasping. He wasn't dead. He was just powerless. For the first time, I truly realized how much I had changed. I wasn't the same forgotten shinobi anymore. I was something else entirely. The time for hiding in the shadows was over. It was time for the world to remember my name. The air was thick with tension, the scent of freshly cut grass mixing with the cold steel of the unconscious Anbu's blade. My fingers trembled slightly as I uncurled them from a tight fist, feeling the lingering pulse of chakra still coursing through my veins. The Tengoku no Shingon had done more than just elevate my abilities. It had rewired my entire being. My senses felt hyper-aware, my thoughts sharper, my movements instinctive. I could see the faintest traces of chakra trailing through the air, lingering like the afterimage of a flickering candle. Even now, I could sense the presence of others. Shinobi patrolling in the distance, their awareness dulled by their own limitations. But I had no such restrictions. I had become something more. I crouched down, staring at the Anbu operative who lay at my feet. His chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. He had underestimated me. Konoha had underestimated me. And if there was one thing I had learned in this life, it was that the village only remembered those who forced their names into history. I reached down, pressing 2 fingers against the edge of his mask, lifting it slightly to reveal the face beneath. He was young, no older than I had been in my past life when I had been discarded by the very system that had raised me. His breathing hitched as he slowly regained awareness, his eyelids fluttering open just in time to see me watching him. His pupils dilated. Fear. "Tell your Hokage," I murmured, my voice colder than I had ever heard it, "that a ghost walks these streets." I didn't wait for his response. My chakra flared, body flickering out of sight in an instant. vanishing into the night before reinforcements could arrive. Konoha's elite would be searching for me now, but it didn't matter. I had planned for this. I had prepared for this. The streets were eerily quiet as I moved through them. I no longer saw Konoha the way I had before. The illusion of safety, of legacy, of honor, it had all been shattered the moment I saw what lay beneath the surface. This village had its champions, its destined heroes, and yet in the darkness there were those like me, the forgotten, the discarded, the ones whose sacrifices were never spoken of. But I would no longer be a footnote in someone else's story. I moved quickly, weaving through the rooftops toward the edge of the village. The Ambu would be on high alert, but none of them could see the way I did now. Their movements were predictable, bound by the limitations of their training, their assumptions of what a shinobi should be. I had surpassed that. I had surpassed them. I needed time to master this power, time to understand what I had truly unlocked. The Tengoku no Shingen wasn't just a tool, it was an evolution. A power that had been buried, hidden, erased from shinobi history because it threatened the very foundation of control. If knowledge was power, then the knowledge I had stolen from the Hokage's archives was a weapon of absolute destruction. But Konoha wasn't the only enemy. As I reached the outer edges of the village, a sudden shift in the air sent a pulse of warning through my chest. Someone was waiting for me. I landed softly in a clearing just beyond the last row of houses, my muscles tensed, my chakra suppressed to its lowest signature. The silence was unnatural, the kind that only existed when predators lurked unseen. Then, a flicker, a blur of movement, and I barely dodged in time as a kunai sliced through the air where my throat had been a second ago. I twisted, landing in a crouch as my eyes locked onto the figure emerging from the shadows. My heart slammed against my ribs. I knew that stance, that presence. Sasuke Uchiha. Of all the people Konoha could have sent after me, they had chosen him. The last survivor of the Uchiha massacre, the prodigy who had been forged in vengeance and blood. His gaze burned with intensity, his Sharingan already activated, the crimson glow cutting through the darkness like a blade. He said nothing. He didn't need to. He knew who I was, knew that I wasn't just some rogue shinobi causing chaos. He had felt it too, the disturbance and fate, the unnatural ripple of something that shouldn't exist. You were never meant to have that power, Sasuke finally spoke, his voice a quiet, lethal promise. I exhaled slowly, and yet, here I am. A second passed, then another, then we moved. Sasuke attacked first, his body flickering forward with speed that should have been impossible to track. But I wasn't the same shinobi Konoha had ignored. The moment his kunai neared, my body twisted in perfect reaction, dodging with a precision that should have been impossible. I saw his intentions before he even made them. His stance, the subtle shift in his weight, the slightest twitch in his chakra flow. I saw it all. Our blades clashed, sparks flying as we exchanged rapid blows in the moonlit clearing. Sasuke was fast, faster than I had anticipated, but he was still bound by the limits of sight. His Sharingan allowed him to track movements, to predict, to read my actions in real time. But I could see further than that. I wasn't just reacting to the present. I was reading the future. I spun, narrowly evading a sharp thrust aimed at my ribs, my fingers flicking in a rapid sequence of hand signs. A pulse of chakra erupted between us, disrupting the air itself, as I unleashed a technique that had never been documented before. Sasuke's expression shifted, shock. For the first time, he was looking at something he couldn't predict. The Tengoku no Shingon allowed me to see beyond linear combat. I was moving in ways that defied the very logic of battle itself. To him, it must have looked as if I were dancing through time. I struck. My palm met his chest in a direct hit, sending him skidding back across the ground. He barely had time to catch himself before I was already closing the distance, my kunai pressing against the skin of his neck before he could fully react. Silence. Our breaths were heavy. The wind whispered through the trees. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, his Sharingan still glowing, but for the first time, hesitant. "You," his voice was barely audible, something close to frustration threading through it. I smirked. Tell me, Sasuke, what does the future look like when you're no longer the one controlling it? His silence was answer enough. I stepped back, flicking the kunai away as I disappeared into the shadows once more. Konoha had sent its best after me, and I had won. This was just the beginning. I was no longer just a forgotten shinobi. I was rewriting fate itself. The night was still thick with the lingering pulse of battle as I moved through the outskirts of Konoha, my body a blur against the moonlit treetops. My encounter with Sasuke had only confirmed what I had already suspected Konoha knew. They had felt the shift in fate, the tremors of something that was never meant to exist, and now they would be hunting me with everything they had. But it didn't matter. Let them come. I had already rewritten the rules of this world. The wind howled against my ears as I pressed forward, pushing my body beyond its limits, fueled by the power coursing through my veins. The Tengoku no Shingon was no longer just a forbidden technique stolen from Konoha's archives. It had become an extension of my very being. Every movement, every breath, every flicker of chakra around me was laid bare in perfect clarity. I could see everything. The shifting tides of battle, the invisible threads of fate, twisting and converging in ways that only I could comprehend. This wasn't just power. It was understanding. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. Power without purpose was nothing more than chaos, and I had no intention of letting my fate be dictated by mere survival. No, this was war. A war against the system that had built itself on the backs of the forgotten. A war against the names that had been carved into history while others were erased from existence. I had been a ghost, a whisper lost in the pages of time. But now I would make sure that the world never forgot me again. I landed in a clearing deep within the forest, the scent of damp earth filling my lungs. This place. It was familiar. A long-buried memory clawed its way to the surface of my mind, the ghost of another life that had been stolen from me. This had once been a training ground, a place where the future of Konoha had been shaped through sweat and blood. But not mine. No, I had never been among them, never been chosen. I had been overlooked, discarded. I closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. The distant echoes of laughter, the sharp crack of kunai against wood, the voices of those who had been deemed worthy of greatness. Naruto, Sasuke, the others who had been given the chance to carve their names into destiny. And yet, where had I been? What had I been to them? A fleeting presence, a footnote in their grand story, an existence so insignificant that even history had chosen to forget me. A cold rage coiled in my chest, slow and smoldering, unshakable. But not anymore. I dropped into a stance, my fingers forming the seals that had become second nature, the Tengoku no Shingon flaring to life as my vision expanded beyond the physical world. The chakra around me pulsed and twisted, forming intricate patterns in the air, and I saw it, the echoes of every battle that had taken place in this very spot. Ghosts of the past flickered before my eyes, shinobi long gone locked in combat, their techniques burning through the night. And then, I saw him. Naruto. A vision of him, younger, training in this very place, pushing himself beyond exhaustion, the weight of his fate pressing down on his shoulders. The burden of being the child of prophecy, the one who would save the world, the one Konoha had bet everything on. I watched him struggle, fail, rise again, a relentless force that refused to be broken. But unlike me, he had never been truly alone. He had been given teachers, comrades, people who had seen his worth even when he hadn't. And that was the difference. It wasn't that he had been stronger than me. It wasn't that fate had chosen him over me. It was simply that he had been given the chance to be great. And I had not. I exhaled slowly, my chakra surging as the air around me grew heavy. The vision shattered, fading back into the shadows of the past, and I was left alone once more. But I didn't need the past anymore. I didn't need their recognition, their validation. I would forge my own legend, carve my own path through this world with my own two hands. I turned sharply as a presence flickered at the edge of my senses. I wasn't alone. I watched as a figure emerged from the darkness, stepping into the moonlight with a calm, measured pace. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and his expression betrayed nothing. He was older now, his movements slower but no less precise. A man who had seen too much, who had carried too many burdens. Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja. Of course they had sent him. I studied him carefully, noting the way his chakra remained calm, controlled. He wasn't here to fight, at least not yet. No, he was here because he wanted answers. "You've made quite the mess," he said finally, his voice even, unreadable. I smirked. "And yet here you are, Konoha's hero, sent to clean up after the mistakes of the past." Kakashi sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "That's what this is about, isn't it? The past." His gaze hardened. "Who are you?" I tilted my head slightly. "You wouldn't remember me." He studied me for a moment, then shook his head. "No, I wouldn't. But that doesn't mean you don't exist." Something in his voice made me pause. There was no arrogance, no dismissal, no false sympathy. He wasn't trying to convince me of anything. He wasn't treating me like a mistake to be corrected, and that made him dangerous. "Konoha forgets those it doesn't need," I said finally, my voice softer than before. "You know that better than anyone, don't you?" For the first time, Kakashi's expression flickered, something shifting beneath the surface. A memory, a regret. He did understand, but understanding wasn't enough. "You can't change the past," he said after a long silence. "No," I agreed. "But I can change the future." A breeze rustled through the trees, the night stretching between us like a battlefield waiting to be claimed. Kakashi didn't move, didn't draw a weapon, didn't activate his Sharingan. But I could see it, the slight tension in his stance, the way his fingers twitched near his kunai pouch. He was prepared for whatever I might do next. But he wasn't ready, because I was no longer the forgotten one. I was the storm that would shake the foundation of this world. Without another word, I vanished into the night, leaving Kakashi alone beneath the moonlight. Let Konoha remember my name. Let the world tremble at what I had become. The forgotten shinobi had returned, and this time, I would not be ignored. The night stretched endlessly as I moved like a shadow through the trees, the cold air biting against my skin. Konoha had deployed its best to hunt me, but I had already shattered their expectations. I wasn't a rogue shinobi on the run. I wasn't hiding. I was simply waiting. Every flicker of chakra I sensed, every patrol that passed beneath me, every whisper carried by the wind, I absorbed it all. The village thought it had control. It didn't. Konoha's grip on the world had been slipping long before I took my first breath in this second life. They just didn't realize it yet. But they would. Kakashi had let me go. Whether out of caution or understanding, I couldn't say. But that brief conversation had confirmed what I already knew. Konoha was afraid. Not of me, not yet, but of what I represented. A crack in the foundation, a disruption to the carefully woven illusion of stability. The village had always prided itself on shaping the strongest, the most loyal, the unbreakable shinobi who would lay down their lives for the Hokage's will. But that was a lie. Strength wasn't granted by Konoha. It wasn't bestowed upon the few deemed worthy. Strength was taken. And now I had more than enough. My body moved with precision, weaving through the thick forest beyond the village outskirts. The air was dense with chakra signatures, some faint, some moving in coordinated patrols. They were looking for me. They were desperate. And desperation led to mistakes. I slowed, my Tengoku no Shingen pulsing, allowing me to see beyond the present moment. The patterns of patrols, the shifting movements, the rotations, I could predict them all. It was almost too easy. I crouched against the thick branch of an oak, watching as a squad of 4 Ombu landed in the clearing below, their masked faces scanning the area. Their leader, identifiable by the slight difference in his gear, made a subtle hand signal. The others immediately moved into formation. Standard tracking maneuver, outdated, predictable, weak. I could end them all in seconds. My fingers twitched at my sides, itching to strike. But no. Not yet. The moonlight reflected off their steel blades, their footsteps soft but heavy with urgency. One of them, the shortest, tilted their heads slightly, as if sensing something off. Good. At least one of them had decent instincts. But instincts alone wouldn't save them. A gust of wind passed through the trees, rustling the leaves like a whisper of something inevitable. Then a sudden shift. I froze, my Tengoku no Shingon flaring as I turned my gaze toward the eastern perimeter of the forest. A new chakra signature, strong, familiar. A slow, deliberate smirk curled at the edges of my lips. They had sent him. Naruto, the child of prophecy, the hero of the village, the one who had risen from nothing to claim everything. Konoha's beacon of hope, the one they had chosen to represent their ideals, their will. He had come for me. Perfect. I moved without hesitation, my body flickering through the trees, closing the distance with effortless speed. The Anbu squad below didn't even sense me go. They weren't my concern anymore. Naruto's chakra was impossible to mistake. It was vast, powerful, radiant. Even without my Tengoku no Shingon, I would have been able to find him. He burned like a sun against the dark backdrop of the night, his energy spilling outward in raw waves, uncontainable. But I wasn't blinded by it like everyone else. I wasn't in awe, because I had already surpassed him. I landed silently on a nearby tree, my gaze locking on to the lone figure standing in the clearing ahead. His back was turned to me, his posture relaxed but aware. He knew I was here. "You've been causing a lot of trouble," Naruto said, his voice even but edged with something deeper. Not anger, not yet, but something close. I stepped forward, letting the moonlight illuminate my face. And yet, here you are, Konoha's golden child, finally paying attention. He turned, his blue eyes burning with something unreadable. He had changed since the last time I had seen him. He carried himself differently. More controlled, more refined. This wasn't the same boy who had once been mocked for being a dead last in the academy. This was a Hokage in the making. But that didn't change anything. Naruto studied me, his hands slipping casually into his pockets, but I could see the way his chakra coiled, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. "I don't know who you are," he admitted, his brows furrowing slightly. "But you feel familiar." A chuckle escaped me, low and sharp. "Of course I do." I took another step closer, my Tengoku no Shingon pulsing, showing me the threads of fate shifting around him. Because in another life, I was supposed to stand where you are now. Naruto's eyes narrowed, the first glimmer of uncertainty flickering across his face. "I was supposed to be Konoha's hero," I continued, voice steady, unyielding. "But I wasn't given the chance. I wasn't given anything. While you were raised in the light, I was cast into the shadows. While you were trained by the greatest shinobi in history, I was left to rot. While Konoha lifted you up, it buried me." Naruto inhaled sharply but didn't interrupt. "And now?" I tilted my head slightly. "Now I've taken fate into my own hands. Now I will take what was stolen from me." Silence stretched between us. "Then, you think you were the only one who suffered?" Naruto's voice was quiet, but beneath it was an undeniable weight. "You think I had it easy?" I frowned, but he didn't stop. "Konoha didn't lift me up," he said, stepping forward. "I had to fight for every ounce of respect, for every bit of recognition. I was alone for most of my life. I was hated. I was feared. But I never let that turn me into something I wasn't." His fists clenched. "And I never blamed someone else for what happened to me." Something snapped inside me. I was in front of him in an instant, my kunai pressed against his throat before he could blink. His eyes widened, but he didn't flinch. "Don't talk to me about suffering," I whispered, my voice like ice. "Don't compare your pain to mine." His gaze hardened. "Then what are you going to do?" The tension between us was suffocating. A single breath away from war. I could end it here, right now. But no, not yet. I pulled back, my kunai disappearing into the folds of my cloak. "You'll understand soon enough," I murmured, stepping away. "The world is bigger than just you, Naruto. And for once, you're not the one who gets to decide how this story ends." Then, before he could respond, I vanished into the night. This was just the beginning. Konoha would soon know what it meant to fear a forgotten legend. And Naruto? He would finally know what it was like to be the one left behind. The village that once rejected me was now at my mercy. I stood atop the Hokage monument, the faces of Konoha's greatest leaders carved into stone beneath my feet, their legacies staring back at me as if daring me to take the final step. Was this what fate had intended for me all along? To stand here, at the pinnacle of the village that had cast me aside, with the power to burn it all down or reshape it as I saw fit? The night air was thick with the scent of rain and the lingering tension of what was about to unfold. Below, the streets of Konoha remained oblivious, the people walking, laughing, living in the illusion of safety. They had no idea. No idea that their world was about to shift, that everything they had ever known was about to crumble. And at the center of it all, me, my hands tightened into fists, the Tengoku no Shingon pulsing behind my eyes, allowing me to see everything, to anticipate every possible outcome. Kakashi, the Anbu squads, the shinobi preparing for war. They were waiting for me to make the first move. And Naruto? He was already on his way. I could feel his chakra surging toward me, cutting through the night like a beacon. He was running out of time. The sky rumbled, a distant storm brewing, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Would I do it? Would I finally take back everything I had lost? The path had been paved with the blood of those who had underestimated me. Konoha had forgotten me once, erased my name from history. But this time, they would never forget me again. I had rewritten the rules, broken the chains of fate, and now, standing here, I was no longer the lost shinobi. I was the one who would decide the future. Then, just as I had foreseen, he arrived. Naruto landed a few feet away, his presence undeniable, his chakra wild and untamed beneath his skin. He wasn't here to talk anymore. He wasn't here to convince me to stand down. No, he had finally accepted what this had become, a battle between the past and the future. His expression was unreadable, but I knew him well enough to sense the conflict beneath the surface. He didn't want to fight me, not because he was afraid, but because he still believed in something. I let out a slow breath, steadying myself. "You're late," I said, my voice calm, unshaken. Naruto's jaw tightened. "I was hoping you'd change your mind before it came to this." I scoffed, shaking my head. "You still don't get it, do you? This was never about changing my mind. It was about making sure Konoha never forgets me again." I gestured around us, and now, here we are. Naruto exhaled, his hands clenching at his sides. "I don't want to fight you." "But you will," I answered, a smirk ghosting my lips. "Because I won't stop. Because I can't stop. Not until everything they built on the backs of the forgotten is reduced to nothing." The air crackled between us, the storm above mirroring the inevitable clash about to unfold. Then, without another word, we moved. Naruto's chakra flared, the Rasengan forming in his palm in a burst of raw energy. I countered in an instant, the Tengoku no Shingon activating, my vision expanding as I read his movements before he could even complete them. I twisted, dodging at the last moment, my foot slamming into the ground as I redirected the force of his attack. The stone beneath us shattered, the monument shaking under the weight of our power. He spun mid-air, landing smoothly before launching forward again. I met him halfway, our strikes colliding with earth-shaking force. This wasn't just a fight. This was the clash of two paths that should have never crossed, two destinies that were never meant to exist in the same world. He fought for Konoha, for the people, for the future he believed in. And I fought for the past, for those left behind, for the revenge that had burned inside me since the moment I had been reborn. Blow after blow, jutsu after jutsu, we tore through the battlefield that had become the Hokage monument. The village below finally noticed. Shinobi began gathering, their eyes wide as they witnessed something that should have never happened. The child of prophecy versus the forgotten one. The hero versus the shadow. A flash of orange, Naruto had entered sage mode. His movements sharpened, his attacks heavier, more precise. But I was ready. I had seen it all before. I ducked, countering with a flurry of kunai laced with explosive tags, forcing him back as I formed my own forbidden jutsu. The air around us shifted, the weight of true power settling in. "I won't let you destroy everything," Naruto growled, his voice steady, unwavering. "Then stop me," I challenged, my chakra surging to its peak. Then, in the blink of an eye, I was behind him. His eyes widened. Too late. My kunai was at his throat. The world went still. For the first time, Naruto hesitated. A single breath passed between us, the storm above finally breaking, rain beginning to fall in slow, heavy droplets. The battle should have ended there. I had won. The hero of Konoha was at my mercy. The village held its breath. They were waiting for me to finish it. But then Naruto spoke. "Is this really what you want?" His voice was quiet, his body unmoving. "You're not the first person to suffer because of Konoha's mistakes. You won't be the last. But if you go through with this, if you kill me now, you'll never be able to take it back." The rain fell harder, soaking through my cloak, washing away the blood and the rage, but not the pain. Never the pain. I knew what he was saying. I knew he wasn't lying, but that didn't change what had been done to me. It didn't erase the years of nothingness, of being overlooked, erased. It didn't bring back the life I had been denied. But it wouldn't change the past, either. I tightened my grip on the kunai. My breathing was ragged, my vision flickering. The rain felt heavy. Then slowly, painfully, I let go. I stepped back, my kunai falling from my grasp, clattering against the stone beneath us. Naruto exhaled, his shoulders relaxing just slightly. He didn't move to attack, didn't seize the moment to finish me, because he never wanted this, and neither had I. The war was over. I turned away, disappearing into the storm before anyone could stop me. Konoha would remember me. Naruto would remember me. But this story wasn't over yet. It never would be. Because I was no longer the forgotten one. I was the shadow that would always remain. And one day, when the world had forgotten again, I would return.